And we're going to talk about 4 different topics. First, that a relationship is about hard work. If you want to thrive at work, you need to work hard. If you want to thrive in a relationship, you need to invest. Second, and we'll talk about how to invest, that the best relationships are ones that create high levels of intimacy, that get to know one another in a deeper level. And these are the relationships that thrive. These are the relationships that also maintain passion and enhance passion 5, 10, and 50 years hence. The best relationships are not relationships devoid of conflict, and we'll talk about what that means and what that looks like. And finally, we're in a positive psychology class. It is about appreciating the positive, because when we appreciate the good appreciates, whether in ourselves or in others. See you on Thursday. Hi, good afternoon, good morning. Today we're going to continue talking about love, but before, if there is a Nadia in this room and you left a keychain in class, we have it here, so please come and see me afterwards. So let's talk about love. Last time we left off with more questions than answers. The question was, difficult question, was how can we sustain love? How can we sustain passion beyond the honeymoon phase? Because even if we did have our Brad Pitt or Halle Berry, that does not guarantee lasting passion. In fact, what we know that it does guarantee over time is a waning of the physiological excitement that we experience when we are with that person. And that in part explains some of the statistics, such as 2/3 of marriages end up in divorce, such as even those who do stay together. After a while, it's out of convenience, out of a sense of duty, and not always, or more often than not, does not have the same sense of togetherness, of passion that existed at the beginning of the relationship, when there were all the good intentions and the hope of a lifelong, committed relationship, marriage or otherwise. And then we asked what positive psychology can do for us. We asked the additional question to the normal question that has been asked for many years, which is, why do so many relationships fail? It's an important question. It's necessary. It's very far from being sufficient. And it leads to the same errors, to the same shortcomings that asking only the negative question leads to when we're studying at-risk use, when we're studying time management and stress. Because when we only ask one of the questions, what we're missing are the children on the bus, metaphorically speaking. What we're missing are the colors in the reality in front of us. If the only question that we focus on is how many geometric shapes are there. Questions create reality. And very often, if we don't ask a certain question, certain answers are obscured and disappear. So we ask this question, and we ask not just about what makes relationships work, but what makes relationships thrive. And psychologists such as David Schnarch and John Gottman, in their extraordinary books, extraordinary research, talk about some of these characteristics. So let's get into them. The first one is about working hard. This is the world's best-kept secret. It's the secret of success. It's the secret of personal success, of successful relationships. There are no shortcuts. If we want a relationship to thrive, to succeed, we need to put a lot of work in it. Now, that seems self-evident, obvious, common sense. But so often in this class we have seen what Voltaire has remarked, that common sense is not that common. Now, why is common sense not that common when it applies to working hard in a relationship? The reason is because many people have wrong expectations of the relationship or of what it means to have a happy relationship. Specifically, most people believe that the most important part of enjoying a happy, lifelong, committed relationship is finding the right partner. And that's certainly important, but it is a mistake to focus on finding. People have, if we draw an analogy to Carol Dweck's research on fixed versus malleable mindset, people have a finding mindset that hurts the relationship. Let me explain. So going back, this we did before spring break, what Carol Dweck showed was that when we praise people for their intelligence, oh, you're so smart, after doing well on a test, they enter a fixed mindset, versus if we praise them for, oh, you've worked so hard, they have a malleable mindset. And that has consequences, because the fixed mindset, the intelligence, you're so smart, doesn't help them much. And then when they go to the next puzzle, next task, which is difficult, that threatens their schema. Oh, if I don't get it, if I don't succeed, it means that I'm no longer smart. And they give up more easily, they're more threatened by failure, and they don't enjoy the process. They become perfectionists, or more likely to become perfectionists. Okay, so this is the fixed mindset. You're so smart, you're so intelligent. The malleable mindset, oh, you worked so hard, oh, I can work with that. So even if I don't succeed and don't do well, I can still learn, and I do learn to enjoy the process more. So that's the malleable mindset. Now let's draw an analogy to what I've just discussed here. If I believe that the most important thing about enjoying a lifelong, committed, happy relationship is finding the right partner, I enter what I call, again, by analogy, the finding mindset, which would be equivalent to Dweck's fixed mindset. And then let's say I have this mindset, this is the most important thing, and then we go through a rough patch in our relationship. Then what happens? Then I begin to think, wait a minute, something's wrong here. I must have not found the right partner. I must have made a mistake, an error of judgment. And that very often leads to a worsening of the situation, and it can, doesn't always, but can lead to a downward spiral. This is the finding mindset, because it's fixed. I found my knight in shining armor. I found my dream woman. I found my Brad Pitt, my Halle Berry. And you know, the problem is that reality inevitably hits. We can't run away from it, and reality dictates that there are no perfect relationships. Remember the Leo Buscaglia quote about perfect love is rare indeed. No, it's not rare. It doesn't exist. And when we realize that, if we have the finding mindset, the fixed mindset, it threatens our schema. There is inconsistency, and then we begin to think, well, I probably did not find the right person. In contrast, if we have the cultivating mindset, That's malleable. That's related to the effort part. Okay, so we're going through a hardship, we're going through difficulty, but it's okay because we're working on it. We're working to resolve it. It's like the students who were praised for their effort. Okay, so I'm not solving this puzzle now, but so what? I'm putting in a lot of effort. I'm trying. I'm even enjoying the process. Look at the direct parallel here between Dweck's work on mindset and our mindset when it comes to relationships. So important, makes such a big difference. And very often we can switch it, if not immediately, relatively promptly. Remember, Carol Dweck was able to change the mindset of people in a single experiment, in a few hours. And we can do the same in a relationship if we truly accept and internalize the fact that relationships, while finding the right partner, a good partner, is of course important. It is much more important to then cultivate that relationship. And we'll get to that in a minute. But the question then arises, so why do people have the finding mindset? Why do people have or not have the cultivating mindset if it is healthier? One of the main reasons are the movies. Now, movies are wonderful. They're terrific. They show us what is possible. You know, Aristotle once said about art that or about fiction, that it's more important than history because history depicts things as they are, whereas fiction depicts things as they can and ought to be. So it's a wonderful thing to show us the model of what's possible, especially the romantic movies. And I don't mean romantic in terms of love, romantic in the 18th, 19th century sense of romantic, showing us how things can work, how things can become, the potential of human nature, of relationships, of our world. So it's a wonderful thing, but one thing that movies don't do well is that they focus on the finding of the right partner, and hence very often entrench, reinforce the finding mindset. Because most of the movies, love stories, look like this. There are struggles, there are fights, there are disagreements, there are challenges on the way, and then at the end, Mr. and Mrs. Smith get together and they live happily ever after. The screen drops and they walk into the sunset. You know what the problem is with that picture? The problem is that movies end where love begins. It is after the screen drops that the actual work starts. It is easy. It is easy to have a good relationship at the beginning, the honeymoon phase, or through the first year or two, usually. But then what happens after a while when the initial physical, physiological instinct wanes? What happens when we start to recognize and understand and realize and see that, well, this partner is not perfect? What happens then? Well, that's when true love begins, and that's where true love is cultivated and formed. Now, I'm not belittling the importance of finding a partner, the right partner, the right person for us. It is, of course, important. And often it takes kissing many frogs before we find our prince. But the more important part of a thriving long-term relationship is the cultivation. This is where the effort starts. It's after the sun sets that difficulties and hardships rise. Now, connected to this mindset is the notion that there is only one right person for us. And all I need to do and all I need to dedicate all my effort and time to is find that right person. And if I have to go all the way to Yale, I'll go there to find that person. the modern version of a Shakespearean tragedy, perhaps. Whatever I need to do, I will do it just to find that one right person, even if I'm in Boston and they're in Seattle. I will find that right person. I don't believe that. It's simply not true. Not only and it's not a matter of faith. I mean, we know of many people who thought they found the right person, maybe did find the right person, and then either for tragic reasons or for good reasons they were no longer together, and they found more love. There are 6 billion people in the world. There's more than one right person. So what makes a relationship unique? It's not finding that one right person. Once again, it's cultivating that one chosen relationship. It's by virtue of working together, of being together, of spending time together, of dedicating one another. That's how we create the one chosen relationship, one special relationship. That's how two separate I's become a we. And again, to do that, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't even happen in a year or two. It takes time. In fact, it doesn't happen. It is happening. It's a process. It's not about success in a relationship. It's about succeeding in a relationship. We cultivate a relationship not just simply by putting on the ring or by giving the vows. It's by doing things together. Why is that so important? Let me draw on some research from other areas of psychology. And this is something that I've mentioned on a couple of occasions. Some of the most important work done by Muzafer Sherif back in the 1950s. And until Muzafer Sherif came along, as I mentioned before, the hypothesis that people had when it comes to resolving interpersonal conflicts or intergroup conflicts, the belief that people had was that all you need to do was get the conflicting sides together. The dominant hypothesis was what's called the contact hypothesis. Get the two conflicting sides in touch with one another, whether it's conflicting ethnic groups, whether it's conflicting individuals, get them together and you will resolve the conflict. This was much of the work done by Gordon Allport in our department here back in the 1930s. Muzafer Sherif comes along and shows that that's not the case. In fact, just bringing them together, just the contact of the conflicting sides, very often, more often than not, intensifies the conflict rather than resolves it. And I gave this in the context of the Arab-Israeli conflict, where people just got together and the hope was that we'll have peace in our time. And instead, we got more war in our time. Contact is not enough. Not when it comes to bringing nations together, not when it comes to bringing ethnic groups together, and not when it comes to bringing a couple together. You see, in a relationship, inevitably there are conflicts. Inevitably. There is no perfect relationship, and if there were a perfect relationship, it would not be a conflict-free relationship, as we'll see shortly. So there are conflicts in a relationship, whether it's during the first year or whether it's after 2 or 3 years, and serious conflicts. I'm not just saying about, a conflict about, well, you should put down the toilet seat or keep it up. I mean, serious, well, that could be serious, I guess. But other serious conflicts. And when there is conflict and all the couples are doing together is simply being together, in touch with one another, that's not enough to resolve that conflict. And very often it will start as a minor conflict and then get worse, spiral up, or rather spiral down over time. So what does Sherif say, and what do we know today? That the important thing in resolving conflicts is having a superordinate goal. When the two ethnic groups, when the two nations work together and are interdependent, whether it's in business, Or in a relationship, it could be raising children, but doing the things together, or belonging to the same political campaign, or opposite political campaigns, that's fine, but working together, supporting one another. And when you have the working together, the doing together, that's when you're most likely to resolve the conflicts. And in fact, these conflicts, as we'll see shortly, can make the relationship even stronger. What the couple need are mutually meaningful goals. And again, it could be having children together and raising the children together. You know, not just, okay, well, we had the child and then, you know, the mother or the father raised the kid, more often the mother. And, okay, so we did something together. No. The kid has to be, to put it in very, very delicate and I'm sure appropriate terms, the kid has to be a joint venture. Isn't that a lovely term to describe having kids? As long as they don't bring any bad debt, or, you know, that there is good return on investment. Yeah, that's just the right language there. Took me a while to think about it. So, working together, bringing the kids up together, or being on campaigns together, or helping one another at work, but doing things together. John Gottman, in the strongest marriages, husband and wife share a deep sense of meaning. They don't just get along. They also support each other's hopes and aspirations and build a sense of purpose into their lives together. That doesn't mean that they need to do everything together, and it's okay for one to have his or her own meaningful goals at work where they don't work together. That's perfectly fine. But in addition, there have to be things that are done together. In other words, what they need is an active kind of love. You know, the first time I really understood the meaning of active love was through a story that Shahar, who's one of my best friends in Israel, told me. We were in the same class, but he got married at a relatively young age. He was in his early 20s, and had his first kid soon after. And he's very introspective, very honest, high levels of integrity. And he told me that at the beginning, when he had Noam, when Noam came home from hospital with his wife, with his mom, Shahar didn't really feel love toward Noam. Was very cute, adorable, but he didn't feel a strong sense of love that he thought he should have felt. Needless to say, he felt enormously guilty about it. That didn't last for long, fortunately, because as soon as Shahar started taking care of Noam, which meant changing his diapers, which meant getting up in the middle of the night and feeding him, which meant taking him for walks, which meant cleaning after him, that's when the love was cultivated. That's when he started to feel a deep sense of fatherhood for the first time. So it wasn't natural. For some people it is natural. For women more often, but not always. More often than men. So we can rely and wait for this natural thing to happen, or we can actively engage in activities that show, that illustrate our love. And remember self-perception theory. We very often form theories and beliefs about ourselves based on how we behave. So the examples we used in the past, if I see myself going up to someone and asking them out, even if they say no, I perceive myself as someone with confidence, and my self-esteem will go up, regardless of the response. If I see myself trying out for plays, I will perceive myself as someone courageous. If I perceive myself as, if I take care of myself, I'll see myself as someone with self-esteem who cares about him or herself. So the same with children. If I see myself taking care of my child, my conclusion in self-perception theory is, oh, I must love that child. And that love actually intensifies over time. Whether it's with children, whether it's with partners. We may experience the love automatically at the beginning. It could be love at first sight. However, if we don't sustain the act of love, over time, because of self-perception theory, over time that will go away. Because if I don't invest anything in the relationship, self-perception theory, oh, it must not be that important for you. And then the love wanes. Not to mention all the physiological reasons why it wanes over time. So if there isn't the act of love, it cannot be sustained. How do we sustain love? How do we remain active? Relationships, rituals. Now, when we talked about rituals, I told you about the rituals that my wife and I have. 2 dates a week. Meals with the whole family. Additional, at least once a week, usually it's 3 or 4 times a week. But we have these rituals. Because without rituals, in our modern world, the important yet not urgent, in the words of Stephen Covey, the important yet not urgent activities will take a back seat. So yeah, we know it's important to go on dates, but it's not as urgent as a phone call that I just received from work and I have to wait or stay at work. Whereas if it's a ritual, if we do it no matter what, then it will sustain itself.